Dear students, today we will be discussing about productivity strategies in Indian agriculture. And the session would be that first we will discuss about why strategies were required at all. Secondly, what those strategies were. These were namely Green Revolution and the Golden Revolution. And what were the challenges that were posed by the adoption of these strategies, why, in what way they impacted upon the economy, whether it was the social impact, whether it was the environmental impact, whether it was the economic impact. We'll have to discuss and look at the total picture, that how the strategies, when they were adopted, how they helped the economy and the agriculture, and in what way it had an adverse effect on the agriculture sector. So first we start off and we talk about the Green Revolution. Now before we do that, let us find out what were the reasons for developing these strategies at all. The first reason was that the Bengal famine, you must have all read about this, that in 1943 there was a famine which took place in Bengal. That time our country was not independent, and the British rulers, they were more interested in the war which was waging in other parts of the world rather than focusing on the hungry people in India. So in that famine, about 4 million people died of hunger, which was a very big setback for the Indian population. And the second reason why we needed to increase productivity was that the Indian population was growing faster than the food that was produced for them to eat. So we needed to increase the production. And also, it stated that the fact was that India's efforts for food security till 1967 were largely based on expanding the farming areas. What they did not focus on was why we could not increase the productivity in that same area rather than increase the farming areas. So, there were a lot of thought which was going into how we can increase the productivity. And one of the, you can say, the strategy that was adopted and one of the measures that was taken to increase productivity was the Green Revolution, which was actually the period in India from 1967 to 78. Now let us try to understand what is this Green Revolution. Green Revolution refers to the successful experiments in the agricultural sector in developing countries. It was most successful in India. It has been pioneered by Dr. Norman Borlaug in Mexico. What he did was that he developed the high yielding varieties. They were known as HYV varieties of seeds, which were actually crossed with certain Japanese variety of rice which was grown in Japan, and then very successfully they could increase the productivity. Similarly, they carried out these experiments in wheat, and they were very successful in increasing the productivity from that same area of land in which they used HYV varieties, and they were able to increase the production.
There's still a lot of hungry, miserable people in the world. And without food, a lot of the other things that we take for granted as being essential aren't very meaningful. So food is one of the basics. And this is true for all political ideologies as well as for academic and scientific organizations. They can't function without people who are well nourished.
In the middle of the 20th century, world population was expanding faster than food production, and some economists believed famine was inevitable in many developing countries. But Norman Borlaug, an agricultural researcher at a Rockefeller Foundation project in Mexico, developed methods of raising wheat that tripled yields. He later repeated his success in India, Pakistan, and Africa. At the age of 94, Borlaug remains feisty when recalling the fight to get bureaucrats and academics to accept his ideas. But Borlaug's scientific approach to farming allowed millions of people to live who would have otherwise starved. Norman Borlaug's latest concern is a new variety of wheat stem rust called UG99. Is that cutbacks in agricultural programs have made it harder to respond to such threats.
Well, when you go into a field, because of my competitive spirit, in part that I learned from athletics, you should go in with the passion to try to do your best. And that's why the people that I brought to Mexico, I always told them on the first day, we're going to teach you to be rebels, not with guns and daggers, but with science and technology.
And I am not one to sit idly by and see man breed himself into a corner by increasing his numbers faster than food production is being increased. And if I have anything to contribute to this world, when I know that our scientific facts are right and we have materials that can be brought together in a meaningful production program, I'm going to play that card and play it hard.
So the Indian government, because they also were facing the problem of ship-to-mouth existence. That is, the food used to come by ship and it used to be consumed by the millions of our countrymen. And in fact, that was also leading to, India's image in the world being suffering a setback, because they would refer to India as the one with the begging bowl, that they would always come and they want food and they want grains. And so Indian government felt that ours is basically an agricultural economy. As you know, at the time of independence, 80% of India's rural population, they lived in the villages, and they were the ones, it was an agricultural economy, and despite that we were not able to feed our population. So it was very acutely felt that we need to increase the productivity from that same hectare of land which we were doing earlier. So that at least when we increase the productivity, then there will be more food for our growing population, because it was very difficult to control the population. But if we had measures to increase the productivity, then there would be enough food for everyone on the table. So that is how the policy makers, they started thinking about the Green Revolution. They decided to invite Dr. Norman Borlaug to India, and he came to India at the invitation of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, who is considered to be the father of the Green Revolution in India. And the aim of this program was to ensure food security and self-sufficiency in food grains. Now we also need to understand that why was Green Revolution important? I mean, there could have been so many different ways in which the productivity could have improved. Of course, it was very scientifically designed program in which high yielding varieties were used for increasing the productivity. But there were other implications also of why Green Revolution was important. And one was that it was not just to increase the agricultural production, but to change the outlook of the politicians, the policy makers, the scientists, and the farmers, to usher in improvement in the method of farming. So basically a different outlook on agriculture was required, and for that Green Revolution proved to be the stimulus. And it also helped to India become self-sufficient in food grains in 1974, which was a very big thing, because India was importing food for a number of years after independence. and it's only in 1974 that they became self-sufficient in food grains, and subsequently also started exporting food grains, which proved to be a fillip for the image of for the country in the whole world, because people started looking up to India. Okay, so now they are self-sufficient in food grains, which made a lot of difference. So that is why Green Revolution was important, not only for the fact that it increased the productivity, but also because it enhanced the image of the country in the eyes of the world. And also, it brought about a change in mindset of the policymakers and the politicians, that here was a new kind of a technology which could be used, and they were willing to experiment with that. So now let's try to find out what was the Green Revolution. So there were there were basically three elements to it. First was that as the Indian government was pursuing the policy of continuously expanding the farming areas. So the Green Revolution also focused on that, and they said that, okay, continue with the post-independence strategy to increase land under cultivation. That was one of the strategies of Green Revolution. The second was double cropping on existing farmland, which was to produce 2 crops in a year, but with irrigation. As you know that in India, basically the farmers are dependent upon the monsoon, which is erratic. Sometimes it is slow, sometimes it is very good, and sometimes there are actually floods in the country. So for the farmers it was very important not to be just dependent upon the monsoon, but also to make use of different irrigation facilities in order to produce 2 crops in a year. And the third was to use improved seed, that is the high yielding variety seeds, that is which were genetically improved seeds, and these were developed for wheat, for rice, millet and corn. And the K68 wheat strain, which is still used in the country, it was developed by Dr. MP Singh, and it is still known in the country as the MP wheat. So you can understand that something which started way back in 1967-68 is still prevalent in the country, and you can understand that the time when it was introduced, what a big impact it had upon the country, that finally after a few years of its introduction, India was able to become self-sufficient. Now, how did the Green Revolution actually start, in which areas it started? Because we have to understand that Green Revolution did not happen all over the country. It was that it had certain prerequisites which were required for Green Revolution to happen. One, of course, as you have already understood, that was the high yielding variety. But then also it required plentiful water, which was not available everywhere. Thirdly, it also required agricultural inputs like fertilizers, and a good dosage of that was required. And also they wanted farmers who were good at producing crops to be the first experimenters of these high yielding varieties. So they started off with Punjab, because Punjab was selected as the first site to try the new crops because of plentiful supply and history of agricultural success. They were already doing well. So the Indian government decided that Punjab should be the experimental land from which they would start the Green Revolution. And imported wheat seed was used in this venture. And also India adopted the IR8. It was a semi-dwarf variety of rice which had been developed by the International Rice Research Institute, and it could produce more grains of rice with irrigation and fertilizers. Now these are the 2 food grains which are primarily consumed by the Indian population, that is wheat and rice. Subsequently, this experiment was also extended to maize, to millets and to other agricultural crops which are commonly used by the Indian population. But the beginning was made with wheat and secondly with rice. Now let us look at some of the indicative statistics regarding the impact that the Green Revolution had in the country. As you can see from this table, that in 1950 the food grain production was 50.8 million metric tons, and subsequently by 2000 it had increased to 201.8. Consequently, for the same number of years, we find that the food grain import has gradually declined and it became nil by 2000. Then the buffer stock for the same number of years, it continuously kept on increasing. And the population also was increasing. But as you know, by 1974, India had already become self-sufficient in food grains. So this means that though the population was increasing, but the production of food grains was also increasing. And the buffer stock was also increasing. That is, India had more food grain which it could stock for times of need, and also the imports were falling. So it would seem from these statistics that India was definitely gaining by adopting the high yielding varieties during the Green Revolution, because on one hand the production was rising and the imports were falling and the buffer stock was increasing. Despite the growth in population, they were still able to feed the population of the country. Now let us know the impact that the Green Revolution had, and the impacts we are going to discuss in terms of the economic impact, the socio-economic impact, the environmental impact, and let us try to understand the revolution in its totality. The high-yielding varieties of wheat produce the best results. In fact, India is one of the biggest success stories of the Green Revolution anywhere in the world. It was tried in other countries also, like the Philippines and some other third world countries. But the impact that the Green Revolution had in India was the highest and the best. India produced 131 million tons of food grains in 1978-79 and became a grain exporter. So what a transformation it was. From the time it was an importer of food grains, it became an exporter of food grains. So that way the Green Revolution strategy was definitely what they wanted to achieve, and they were able to achieve their target. The yield per unit of farmland improved by 30% between 1947 to 1979. So that was a very significant increase, and that is what helped to feed the population of the country. Then the third was that the crop area under high yielding variety increased from 7% to 22% during the 10 years of the Green Revolution, in which wheat constituted 70%, rice 35%, and millet and corn about 20%. So gradually they started off, as I have said a little while earlier, with Punjab. It was sown in a few areas, and gradually it kept on expanding. And more and more food grains, different type of grains were brought under the ambit of Green Revolution. Major benefits of the Green Revolution was experienced by North and Northwestern India between 1965 to 1980. Subsequently, the rate of growth was slower. Now we'll also come to the reasons for why Green Revolution slowed down. But we have to understand that Green Revolution produced different impacts in different parts of the country. It was not a success all over. There were reasons for it, because in some areas water was not plentiful, so it did not give the same results as perhaps a place like Punjab. So it was not a uniform kind of pattern that emerged from Green Revolution. It all depended upon the kind of soil they had, the kind of inputs they were able to put, because these seeds require a lot of water, they require a lot of fertilizers, and in different parts of the country the farmers had different capabilities of how much input they can use. So depending upon that, the success rate was registered. So the success of Green Revolution was not uniform throughout India. This is something which we have to understand, and in the light of this we will try to also understand what were the other impacts of the Green Revolution. The positive impact was that the crop yields improved dramatically and helped to feed the growing population, as we have just discussed about these things a little while ago. And also horticulture emerged as a core sector in agriculture. India emerged as the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables in the world, which is a very big thing. From earlier they were importers of food grains, and they gradually became exporters, and then they also became the second highest producer of or the highest producer of some commodities in the country. So it was a very big impact that and such a satisfying impact that it had on the policy makers, that they were going in the right direction. And also, the positive impact was that famine could be avoided and malnutrition could be contained. So you can understand that for a country in which Green Revolution actually was triggered off by the famine of 1943. There has never been a famine after Green Revolution was introduced in the country. So that was a very significant achievement. Now, what was the economic impact of the Green Revolution? Let's try to understand that as well. The high-yielding varieties needed more water, more fertilizers and pesticides, which increased the growth of the manufacturing sector also. See, what happens is when more fertilizers are required, obviously there would be more demand for the fertilizer sector, and more fertilizers would be produced, with the result that it would have a kind of exponential growth in that, not only that sector, but also where people gaining from this sector would place a demand in other sectors. So it has a growth for the other manufacturing sector also. Then another positive impact was economically that India paid back its loans and improved credit worthiness. And the third was that dams were created to harness water, and the hydroelectric power spurred industrial activity also. So these were as far as the economic impact was concerned. We have already discussed in the earlier discussion that how we increased the productivity. That was also a very positive economic impact. And gradually India's image in the eyes of the world also got enhanced. So these were all very, very, very positive impact of the Green Revolution. Now we also have to understand that everything that is good also has certain limitations. We need to understand in the context of the Green Revolution also. And that was, the limitations of Green Revolution were that it did not create 100% self-sufficiency in food grains for all kind of food. That is also important, because food grains are of many types. Every food grain is not consumed by every section of the society. Some may like a certain kind of food, another may like another kind of food. So it brought about a positive change in productivity only for certain food grains, but not all kinds of food. Then the second limitation was that the concept of high yielding variety could not be extended to all the crops and the grains. High yielding varieties remained limited to fruit grains and not all agricultural produce. And even in that, the whole country did not show the same results. Punjab and Haryana produced the best results, and the remaining country was not able to produce results to the same extent as was done for Punjab and Haryana. And so we cannot say that Green Revolution was a 100% success, but yes, it did have its positives and certain limitations. Now we also need to understand what was the socio-economic impact of the Green Revolution. Agricultural inputs were required for Green Revolution, which pushed the farmer into a debt, and in some cases loss of their farmland. Now what happened was that it required a lot of pesticides, required a lot of fertilizers. Not every farmer was in a position to purchase them. So knowing that it would increase his productivity, a lot of farmers went into debt. They purchased them on debt, and with the result that because the credit system was not very well developed at that time, many of them had to lose their land to money lenders. So that was not a very good thing that happened for the farmers. And you can say that it was introduced at the time with the rest of the credit delivery system was not so well developed. So that is why this kind of an impact did happen. Second was that it increased the level of mechanization on large farms and removed the employment in rural areas. Earlier, every work was done by hand. Now, but when more wheat was produced, then what happened was that obviously they needed more mechanization, and that reduced the employment. Laborers who could get employment in the rural areas, they found less and less opportunity for that. In fact, there was one film I was seeing on the Green Revolution, and the farmer said that we had so much of wheat, we were able to produce so much of it that at times we did not have any place to keep it. So that was also a very positive impact, but then everything positive also comes with certain negatives, and these were some of the negatives that came with the Green Revolution, and we are discussing that at present. Another socio-economic impact was that it increased the class disparities, as wealthier farmers had better access to land and credit. The poorer farmers were not able to have the same kind of impact because they did not. One thing is it required a lot of inputs, and they could not get access to credit that easily as the richer farmers could get. So it increased the class divide in a way, because the richer farmers were able to reap the benefits much more than the poorer farmers could. Then the program was implemented in areas with assured supply of water, fertilizers, and farm credit. It resulted in regional and interstate disparities. And another socio-economic impact was that production of coarse grains and pulses, which was the staple diet of the poor people, lagged behind due to the production of high-yielding varieties. So the focus was primarily on producing high-yielding varieties of wheat and rice, without realizing that this is not the grain which is consumed by the other poorer sections of the society. In every region, there are some grains which are more popular than the rest. Like in the south, rice would be more popular. In some wheat would be more popular, but then in other areas, there are other grains also, like millet, like jowar, bajra, all these different kind of grains which were not supported by the Green Revolution initially. So the production of these and pulses which is normally considered to be the diet of the poor, not nowadays, because nowadays the pulses also have increased so much in price that it is difficult for the poor to feed themselves. So that time it was considered that pulses was something which was consumed by the poor people. So the production of these kind of food grains lagged behind. So these were some of the socio-economic impact of the Green Revolution. Then another impact was that the Green Revolution reduced the food security of the subsistence farmer, as land use changed from pulses to wheat, which was not a major portion of the peasant diet, as we have just discussed a little while ago. Then also the increased production led to fall in prices, and this hurt the small farmer, because more production means that there is more supply. And as you all know by the equation of demand and supply, that when there is more supply and less demand, then the prices are obviously going to fall. And the supply increased so much that the prices fell, and the small farmer was very much hurt by this kind of phenomena happening. Then smallholder farmers and landless laborers migrated to urban areas because they did not find enough work in the rural areas. Mechanization took place in a big way, and they were not finding enough work for themselves, so they migrated to the urban areas. And growth in urban population increased the potential of industrialization. What happened? There was a migration from the rural to the urban sector. So more people, gradually, that is how you know that from 80% of the people who lived in the villages at the time of independence, now that figure has come down to 60%. Gradually there has been a migration from the rural areas to the urban areas. And so it because more people coming to the urban areas means that there would be a spur in the industrial activity. They would demand the goods which are produced by these industries. So that would give a fillip to the industries. So in some ways, the Green Revolution helped in a positive way. In some ways, it proved to be detrimental also for the farmers. Other impacts, that is the environmental impact of the Green Revolution. What happened was that because the Green Revolution required the input of fertilizers and the pesticides on a very huge scale. So with the result that it resulted in accumulation of chemicals in the soil, which damaged it. And after the initial success, the crop yields gradually started declining. And that is become one of the bane of Indian agriculture, because now gradually the production is coming down and the government is really worried about it. The reason is the soil has been damaged by the excessive use of fertilizers and the pesticides. Then it gradually started happening that the increased yield was not being outweighed by the inputs that were used. More and more, initially with few fertilizers, with few pesticides, they could gain a certain amount of yield. But then gradually they had to keep on adding more and more. So it destroyed not only the environment, the soil, but also, because they had to use more of them, ultimately it resulted in that the input cost increased too much and the yield declined. So the environmental impact was negative in that context. Then also the high yielding varieties required a lot of water, and that has upset the water table in many areas. So, and moreover, as you all know, that water is a scarce resource. So there's not enough water available, then the water table is as it is going down. So this also, in many ways, Green Revolution has contributed to that. Then the third was that in the traditional way of farming, many other kind of plants and fishes used to also survive in that same along with the crops. But with the excessive use of pesticides, what happened was that those fish and those leafy green vegetables, they gradually started becoming extinct. And this was, a depleting gene pool that India had to face with. Many of the varieties of green leafy vegetables which were normally consumed and were very highly nutritious, they were consumed by the population, but now gradually they have disappeared, they have become extinct. And because they were all killed by the pesticides which were put into the paddy fields. Then another environmental impact of the high yielding varieties were that it was monocropping, that is growing one crop over a large area. So what it resulted in was that more same crop in the large area meant that more pests were attacking it. So that led to pest damage, and to control that they had to use more pesticides. So again, environmental damage. Then also it reduced agricultural biodiversity, as it relied heavily on the production of just the high yielding variety of crops. Earlier many different type of crops were grown, and then gradually it got focused only on a few high yielding varieties of rice, of wheat, of millet. So only a few, the focus was only on a few food grains, while earlier a lot of different kind of food grains were grown. Then land degradation has forced farmers to clearing forested land to keep up with the production. Now the land which they were tilling earlier, that has gradually become destroyed by the excessive use of fertilizers and chemicals and the pesticides. So they need more land, they need to grow so that they keep up the food production. So they started clearing up the forests. With the result, the forests started declining. So these are some of the environmental impacts of Green Revolution, which have been detrimental for our environment. In some way, socio-economically also the country has suffered, but at the same time the food production has gone up. Now over a period of time, one has realized that the yields went up dramatically in the initial years, but then gradually the yield has also started coming down. So we need to understand that has the Green Revolution really been such a success as the policy makers and the politicians initially considered it to be? So there, you know what, Norman Borlaug, who is the father of the Green Revolution in the world, he was asked, what do you have to say to that? And Norman Borlaug said, it has been a change in the right direction, but it has not transformed the world into an utopia. Utopia, as you know, is a perfect world. It was not perfect, but yes, it was a change in the right direction. Then when he was asked about, you know, the kind of impact, you know, environmental, socio-economic, when it was discussed with him, that what do you have to say to that? So then Dr. Borlaug said, some of the environmentalist lobbyists of the Western nations have never experienced the physical sensation of hunger. They do not do their lobbying from comfortable office suites in Washington or Brussels. If they live just 1 month amid the misery of the developing world, as I have for 50 years, they'll be crying out for tractors and fertilizers and irrigation canals and be outraged that fashionable elitists back home were trying to deny them these things. So he says it's very easy to say all that sitting in air-conditioned offices in Washington, in Brussels, but come down to the grassroots level, live with the villagers and with the farmers, and you'll realize how much these things are needed by them in order to grow their crops. So if they were suffering the same kind of hunger, they would not be saying that. So it's a debatable point, but at the same time, there's no doubt that Green Revolution did bring about an increase in production, which is what the government actually intended to achieve when it started the Green Revolution.
1951, a 10th Prime Minister Nehru wrote to his sister Vijayalakshmi Pandit, also India's ambassador to the US, about his biggest domestic crisis that was fast turning into his trickiest foreign policy challenge. Jonti Village's bumper harvest was replicated across Punjab, Haryana and parts of Uttar Pradesh. By 1968, as wheat output went up from 12 million tons to 17 million tons, India's Green Revolution had arrived.
Indira Gandhi released a special stamp on wheat revolution showing the library building of the Pusa Institute, because she wanted to say that this revolution has come as a result of the introduction of science into farming.
Is credited with introducing India to the technological breakthrough, tells us achieving self-sufficiency would not have been starting with the agricultural minister C. Subramaniam.
Many didn't have confidence this can happen, but some like Subramaniam had confidence. He even openly said, things are so bad, no harm in taking some risk. Lal Bahadur Shastri was very interested when he came to our fields. He spent several hours in a hot sun with me in the field. At the end of it he said, can you also give me some seeds for my house?
This wasn't just political symbolism, but the peak of both interest and investment in agriculture.
Support systems like National Seeds Corporation, the Food Corporation of India, they were all set up. The Prices Commission was set up to calculate cost and what should be the reasonable price, fair price to the farmers. A whole series of steps were taken in a very short period of time.
Sounds far-fetched, but examine the trends. Between 1990 and 2007, the growth of population has outstripped the growth in food grain output, and food availability is down to the level of the 70s. So does the story of Jonti village mirror a nation's shifting priorities?
This is what we have discussed so far about the Green Revolution. Now let us also discuss the Golden Revolution. There have been many revolutions in the country. Another one of them was the Golden Revolution. And the Golden Revolution refers to the production of fruits and vegetables in the country. And as you know, today India is the second highest producer of fruits and vegetables in the whole world, which is a very big distinction. It's a very big achievement for the country that India has managed to become the producer of the second highest producer of fruits and vegetables in the whole world. And the credit for this goes to Dr. K.L. Chadha, who is known as the pioneer of Golden Revolution in India. The horticulture development in India has been achieved through policies, through building institutions, disseminating the knowledge, and energizing the system for employment and entrepreneurship opportunities in the horticulture sector. So regular research has been taking place in the horticulture sector. That information and that knowledge has been disseminated to the farmers. They have used that knowledge. A lot of institutes are doing this kind of research. They have constantly interacted with the farmers, and they have been able to develop the horticulture sector to such an extent that today it has taken a pride of place in the production of fruits and vegetables. And millions of even small farmers have benefited, which is a very positive impact of the Golden Revolution. Now let us look at the achievements. That is, the demand for horticulture produce is on the rise due to increasing population, changing food habits, realization of high nutritional value of horticultural crops, and greater emphasis on value addition and export. See, what has happened is that in India, gradually the dietary habits have changed. People are gradually becoming more aware that fruits and vegetables are good for the health. So there is consequently greater demand for these products. And that has also, when the demand is there, obviously the production also has to keep pace with the demand that is there in the country. And also world over, there is a great demand for fruits and vegetables. So India focused very rightly on the production of fruits and vegetables as part of their Golden Revolution, and they were not only able to feed the country but also to export these commodities. Then the horticultural crop production has brought prosperity even to the semi-arid areas. Indian topography and agroclimate are ideally suited for horticulture. Now what happened in the Golden Revolution was that a lot of farmers who were growing other crops in their limited amount of field that they have, they were advised that you can grow that crop as well as you can plant some trees, which will give you some additional income also. And they took the advice of the horticulturists who were giving them that information, and they were definitely able to increase their income. So that is why gradually it turned out to be a big success in India. And self-sufficiency in horticulture has been already been achieved in many of the crops, and exports of fresh fruits and vegetables is also increasing, and it has become a commercial viable venture for the farmers. So these have all been the positive impacts of the Golden Revolution. Now let us look at some of the statistics. As you can see from this table, you find that in the area of fruits and vegetables and spices, the area under production has more or less stayed the same, but the production has dramatically increased. I am referring to the period from 2000 to 2006. You can see that in 2002, the production of fruits was about 45.2 million tons per hectare, million tons, sorry, and it has increased to 57.8 by 2006, despite the fact that the area has not increased that much. Similarly for vegetables and for spices. So the Golden Revolution did bring about an increase in production, and that was the very positive impact that Golden Revolution had in the production of the horticultural crops. Now again, as in the case of Green Revolution, Golden Revolution also threw up certain challenges, and that was, first was that it led to fast eroding gene pool. That is, some of the varieties which were traditionally grown, gradually they started becoming extinct because new varieties came up. Now, if you go to buy any fruit sapling, you are immediately told that this is a high yielding variety, this is hybrid. Hybrid is the word which is used for describing a high yielding variety. So what happened was some of the traditional crops which were grown through for time immemorial, gradually they started becoming extinct because people were not growing them. They were more taking to the hybrid variety. So it led to the fast eroding gene pool. Then another challenge was that the population was increasing at a very fast pace, and keeping the demand being with the supply was becoming a big challenge for the farmers. Then third is that shrinking land and other natural resources. Gradually the land available for cultivation is going down. The reason is that more and more land is now being used for commercial purposes. Maybe some houses are coming up there, some malls are coming up. So the land available for cultivation of the horticulture, for the growing the trees and fruit trees and for vegetables is gradually coming down. Then also there are production constraints. If the demand is going up, it is not possible to immediately increase the production. So production constraints also stay. Then also, post harvest in India, despite it being the second highest producer of fruits and vegetables, a great percentage of the harvest is lost because we do not we don't have good processing facilities. So fruits and vegetables are lost to after harvesting them. And another challenge is that the produce has to be of international quality and globally competitive, because now we are all linked globally because of globalization. So that has sometimes not happened, and although the production has increased, yet at the same time the quality has not been of international standards. Now at the end I would like to just tell you that revolutions keep coming, revolutions keep going. So no revolution is really permanent, and it would suffice to say that they are not final solutions, rather they are placeholders till the next one comes along. So revolution would come, and revolution would bring its impact, both positive and negative, but at the same time the research has to go on, will go on, and it is the policy makers, the government, how they will really be able to make use of that research and to bring about a positive change in the production of the fruits, vegetables, for the different food grains. That is all something which has to be discussed in totality. There are some positives, there are some negatives. Today, as we have discussed about the Green Revolution and the Golden Revolution, similarly there have been other revolutions also, like White Revolution, which was regarding milk. Then there was a Blue Revolution, which was regarding the seafood. So similarly, and the Yellow Revolution, which was regarding the oil seeds. So it would continue. These kind of revolutions will come, they will go. Some positive impact would be there, sometimes some negative impact like environmental impact, or maybe the socio impact may be negative. But the fact stays that the Green Revolution brought about a very positive change in the production of food grains in India. Similarly, the Golden Revolution has been a success in increasing the production of fruits and vegetables in the country, and it has helped India to occupy a pride of place in the Committee of Nations.
Food production has been stagnant around 200 million tons for nearly a decade. Average growth rate of agriculture in past decade is around 1.5%. The economic growth rate of 8 to 10% is sustainable only on a sustained high growth rate of agriculture. Factors which are depressing the crop yields in India or manifold. To mention few, inadequate attention to land preparation, soil testing, sowing, planting, balancing of soil nutrients for the required specific crop, irrigation, post-harvest and pest management. On the whole, total farm management. Mechanization in Indian agriculture is inevitable. Despite its high cost and high profile, mechanization is still only an input like any other, such as fertilizer, seed, and crop protection chemicals, and is one of a mix of management tools a farmer has available to maximize production and profit. It's only one of a mix of management tools that a farmer uses for the purpose of agriculture production.